So as I've mentioned, if you're making less than $50,000 a month, you're likely focused on the money still. And I think personally that that's okay, as long as you know what you need to get to the next $1 million mark. The thing is that after you hit 10 or 50K, then you realize that money isn't all that. And that's something that's, to me, was a letdown feeling when I realized that money and having that much money is not all of that. You're listening to Hustle Culture, a podcast that shows you how to take your hustle to the next level. I'm Jordan Glickman, a 24-year-old homeless entrepreneur who's constantly looking for a better way. Whether it be maximizing work-life balance while trying to reach my first 7 figures, or taking advantage of credit card points and biohacking my way to optimal health and efficiency, I'm all about it. Regardless if you're an entrepreneur or not, I invite you to join me in my journey of constant self-development. Join me and my guest as we deliver real value and actionable steps to embrace and make the most out of your hustle. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited about this episode. This episode is going to be about money. Money is something that I've always found very interesting, relatively speaking, because it's always controlled some aspect of my life and really does for every single person's life as well too. What I find very interesting about it and people in general is how everybody has different perspectives on it. People use it differently. People leverage it differently. And it's just this piece of paper, this piece of currency, but it's so interesting how there's so many different ways that it's perceived and so many different ways that it's used. And so I want to preface this podcast as well before I get into the nitty-gritty of it. A lot of this is going to be reconfirming these ideas to myself, and it's also going to be advice that I wish I had 1, 3, 5, 10 years ago of someone kind of affirming and telling me that it's okay to be focused on money, to go after it, to get as much of it as I possibly can. I think that, at least for myself, there's always been someone, whether it was in my family, significant others, peers, that always said, don't chase the money, don't focus on it too much. And that's something that always kind of irked me. And I kind of understood why, but I never got a genuine, really good reason from somebody as to why I shouldn't focus on the money. And I'll make some of the arguments for them here to preface this podcast as to why you shouldn't. But I think overall, there's a lot of good that can come from it. But I think also having the right perspective when you're going after a certain amount of money and having that understanding of why you're doing it and what it entails as you're driving towards that certain goal of money is also very important as well too. Overall, the reason why I think that it's bad to focus on money is that it's a poor guide for making decision. Money is not a high enough motivator to do something great and to do it for a long time. So if you're really focused on money and that's the one reason that you're doing something, it's typically going to end up causing you to fail and to not have the right outcome that you're looking for, especially if it's a longer term outcome and a longer term play. Money is not something that's going to really ground you and get you super focused and keep you persistent on what that long-term goal is. And so that's why, again, basing bigger decisions or longer-term decisions on just the goal of money alone is not a great idea. And that's really the best argument that I have here, as far as I can see, and it might be a little bit biased, as to why you shouldn't focus on money. But I want to talk about kind of the reasons as well, really, why you should, or how you can leverage that to your advantage. But if you do, what perspective I think personally that you should take, or at least the advice that I wish I had gotten 3 to 5, 10 years ago. So I think one of the things to do and really have a perspective on when you're driving after a certain amount of money is, what is the reason you're doing it? What's the why? No matter what it is, at least have a reason, and what is the reason why you're going after that certain amount of money. And if you don't have a long-term position on that reason is going to die. It's going to ultimately lead to a poor product if you are building a business. If you're working for someone else, it's going to lead to poor performance. If you're just driving towards a certain salary goal and that's all you care about, it's going to lead to poor performance because you don't have the right fulfillment. You're not getting the right fulfillment out of what you're doing. If you're just building a cash cow business and you're taking a bite out of the best piece of steak every single week and you're not ultimately growing something longer term, it might be okay for now, but long term, it's not going to be okay. It's not going to be sustainable. And again, going back to the reasons that I talked about in the beginning here, it's not going to be something that's possible for the long term to keep you focused and keep you persistent at what you're doing. So, my reason personally for money in general, whether it's short term or long term, and the reason I want it, the reason I want to amass a certain amount of it, it allows me to buy back time. Whether it's paying for a driver, it's paying for maids, it's paying for whatever it may be, people that can assist me and aid me in life that are going to allow me to have more time to spend with my family, with kids, with whatever it may be. It's going to allow me to provide jobs for other people, which I personally find relatively fulfilling as well, knowing that I'm supporting other people, giving them opportunities that they otherwise may not have had. It allows me to travel, something that I really find fulfillment from. Whether it's in different countries, different islands, different mountains, I find that really fulfilling. So it leads to certain forms of fulfillment and happiness. I'll be able to have the choices that I want. And that for me is the biggest one, next to freedom. The two biggest things why I want money is freedom and the ability to have choices. And I probably should have started off by saying those. But nonetheless, the reason that I truly want to amass amount of money that I want to is because of the freedom that it can bring and the ability to have choices. The ability to be able to make those choices on the things I talked about by being able to provide people jobs, buying back time, traveling, being able to live where I want to live, being able to eat what I want to eat, experience whatever it is that I want to experience, having the choice to be able to do that regardless of whether you think it's cool or my mom thinks it's cool, being able to do that. And ultimately, these things that I want bringing back fulfillment. So even if that money is me building a school in Africa and putting my name on it, if that brings me fulfillment, again, money is a tool that allows me to do that. For me, amassing that amount of money is not for showboating. It's not for showing off, look at what I did. It's for, again, the things that it enables. It's that freedom and that ability that it gives me, the ability to create choices, to have choices. And I find, at least in my journey so far, that as certain amounts of money are unlocked within the journey that I'm taking, certain goals are then, of course, unlocked along the way, and certain points of happiness and fulfillment are then also unlocked. It starts to show you what your strengths and what your passions are. And that's something that I've truly learned in the past year. And this is all going to come full circle here. So if you're listening still, if you listen to the end, all of this is going to come full circle as to, again, the true reason why I think it is okay to focus on money, but also as long as you have the right perspective in doing it. So in my journey so far, I've learned what I'm actually good at, what I enjoy doing, what brings me fulfillment. And that for me so far, even though I'm driving after a certain goal, even though I'm driving after a certain amount of money, I'm learning so much about myself right now that I'm being fulfilled in just that way alone. And so it's sustainable for this certain period of time. But doing what I'm doing now would not be sustainable for 5 or 10 years probably. So now what you'll also find, and I'm starting to kind of see remnants of this now in my journey, but if your fulfillment is not completely there, your talent starts to become lost because you are unhappy. And when you're unhappy, you're unable to focus and persist on the things that you are good at and get better at them and give them the attention they need. So in order to be truly focused on money, if that is going to be your goal for the next 1 or 2 years, and I'm probably speaking to an audience right now that is making anywhere between $0 and $50,000 a month, I would be of the opinion that if you're making over $50,000 a month, you're probably not focused on the money anymore. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that could be above or below that are not focused on the money. But again, I'm probably speaking to a select audience that indefinitely are between the $0 and $10,000 a month mark that are focused on the money right now, whether they know it or not. And I think in order to be relatively focused on a certain money amount or goal, whether you're amassing it or you are building that up as monthly reoccurring income, you cannot think about other things. You've got to be focused on whatever it is that's getting you to that goal. You've got to be focused on one thing and be going all in on it. You can't also build a life around needing money. That would be one of the perspectives and the traits that I would take in and that I have taken in. I live relatively comfortably right now, but I absolutely do not spend anywhere near the amount of money that I make on the basis that I'm building it up for my next play, my next long-term play. So I find it very important is that one of the perspectives that you take is that if you're going after a certain amount of goal of money, you also know what your next step is. What are you going to do with it? And how is that going to help you in life? I've said for the past 3 years when I started the current business that I have now, is that I am specifically doing this for money. I'm good at what I do. I enjoy what I do, but I know that I cannot do this for 10 years long. I don't know what I want to do next, but I know that the money is going to be a tool that I can leverage to be able to do whatever it is that I find that I want to do next. Because by that time, I will understand what my strengths truly are. I will understand what I'm most passionate about. I will understand what do I want to build for 10 years? What is something I want to do for 5 or 10 years long? And have a genuine passion and purpose behind doing it. And that's my reason for what I've built so far and what I want to do with the money. So I'm primarily focused, probably 90% right now, on what I'm doing because I know it supports me. It's going to get me to the goals that I'm trying to accomplish. I know that it's scalable. I know it's a good business. I know what I'm doing is right for right now. And I know that I'm relatively happy with it. I don't think you can be perfectly happy with anything, but I know I'm pretty happy with what I do. I'm good at it, great results. I'm excited for it most every day, but I know that it's again going to lead me to the bigger opportunity that's going to be a longer term that has more purpose behind it, more passion, more of a reason why I'm doing it besides just money. Maybe it's an impact for people or globally or environmentally, whatever it may be. I'm trying not to hint at it too much because I don't want to give that stuff away yet. I want to leave these as surprises for the coming episodes. So as I've mentioned, if you're making less than $50,000 a month, you're likely focused on the money still. And I think personally that that's okay, as long as you know what you need to get to the next $1 million mark. The thing is that after you hit 10 or 50K, then you realize that money isn't all that. And that's something that's, to me, was a letdown feeling when I realized that money and having that much money is not all of that. It is what will help drive you to help you find your passion and your strengths along that journey that you're going to have, whether you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur. It'll help you determine what that next step is. And I'll give it a quick example of that is that I used to think when I was making, I think $500 or $800 per month, I didn't do very well the first year or first months of business. And I'll talk about that in another podcast, being very transparent with that, is that I used to think if I made $5,000 a month, pretty much in just profit, I would be okay. That my life would be perfect. I could afford anything I wanted and I could live wherever I wanted. And I don't spend 5K a month still, but I definitely have a new perspective on making 5K a month now than what I did then. It's not as fulfilling as what I thought it would be. I thought that making $10,000 a month would be fulfilling. I thought $20,000 a month would be way more fulfilling, and it's not. It doesn't change your life that much. And to me, that was okay. I got over it rather quickly. When I made the first $100,000, when I saw the first month that was $20,000, $10,000, $30,000 a month, it was exciting to have accomplished such a goal, but nothing changed. Everything was still the same. I didn't go out and buy a Ferrari. I didn't go out and buy certain things. I didn't do anything crazy. It was just an accomplishment and then moved on and on to the next goal. There was no big change for me. So what happened is once I made these certain amounts of money and I got to certain points, I started to realize that I needed to leverage this money to do something more, something longer term, something that I would have more passion, more purpose, more of a reason why I was doing it besides just money. Not to say I didn't want to set bigger goals next, the $1 million, $100,000 a month, whatever it was going to be. It's not that it didn't cause that. It certainly did, of course. I wanted more. I'll always want more, probably. But what it did truly was show me what I want to do longer term, that I want to build something longer term, that I want to have more purpose in what I'm actually doing besides just doing it because I'm good at it and because I'm getting good results and because clients are happy. So the real perspective that I guess to sum this up is to take away that the reason for doing what you're doing, if you're just driving towards money and you're anywhere between that $0 and $10,000 a month range, let's say you still haven't crossed 10K a month, that's okay, is if you're going to drive for that, take it and be in the perspective and the mindset that you are trying to understand what are your strengths, what are your actual strengths, what are you truly good at? Is it managing people? Is it leadership? Is it building teams? Is it HR? What is it that you are actually good at? What do you want to do long term? What do you want to do for 5 or 10 years long that has a real purpose behind it, that has real passion behind it? That's something that you can grow into a much larger business than just $10,000 or $50,000 a month. Something that you could grow into, say, $100,000 or $500,000 per month. Being of the perspective and being more in this for the long term and having a long-term view on what you're doing, even though you're just focused on the money right now, that's okay. But understanding why you're doing it and being of the impression and in the mindset that as you are on this journey right now to just get to 100K or just 10K a month, just 20K a month, whatever your goal is, that you are using that as a journey of experiences to help shape what you are going to do in the longer term. And I think, again, just looking back on myself in hindsight and retrospect, looking back on all of those things, that's what's allowed me to get the position that I'm in today, where I have pretty high certainty in what I'm going to be doing in the next 12 months and why I'm going to be doing it, because of the perspective that I've put myself in and the mindset I've put myself in for the past 6 to 8 months, thinking about all of these things that I've talked about in this podcast so far. So look, if you're making $0 to $10,000 a month, and maybe you're just in the very beginning of that, likely what you're going to have to do, and this is a little bit semi off topic, it's not about why you should make money, it's about what you're going to have to do if you've not really ventured into your own goal yet and how you're making that $100,000. You're going to have to probably do something that's high margin, low startup costs, likely a service-based business, something probably internet-based, I would imagine. And you're going to have to focus on selling yourself. That's really the only option that you're going to have. Your goal within that business is to cover all of your fixed costs. Just get your rent, your food, your phone bill, all those things covered, and you have really nothing to worry about. You should have absolutely zero to worry about if you can guarantee that your fixed costs are covered. That was a big one for me in the very beginning of my journey. Once I was able to make $1,000 or $2,000 a month because I was living outside of the US where cost of living is much cheaper, I knew that I was okay. I knew that I could then just go all in on the business. I didn't have to worry about how much I was going to make, even though I wanted to make $10,000 a month or $5,000 a month, and I thought that would cure everything. Once I got there, I realized it didn't. But once I covered that first $1,000 or $2,000 a month, that was my cost of living, everything technically was okay. There was a lot less stress. So that was really the first goal. And that's, I think, the first and most important goal is figure out how to have enough reoccurring income that covers those fixed costs. And you technically should have zero fear. You should have zero fear. You may or may not, but you should have zero fear, because that's really all you have to lose is whatever your fixed costs are. And that's why I talked about in the very beginning or in the middle of this podcast that I've built my lifestyle modestly. I've not built it on the amount of money that I'm necessarily making, but the amount of money that I can very comfortably live, and I'm not doing anything excessive. I'm not living outside of my means in any way. Now look, in this $0 to $10,000, you're gonna have to focus on selling yourself, selling your time, selling your knowledge and your skills, and that's really all that you have to offer. You have nothing else to offer, and that's okay. That is just where you're at. But if you put your head down and you focus on that money goal, and you focus on having the mindset and the perspective that you are as an outside view on yourself, an outside view on yourself as you're taking this journey and you're trying to figure out what your strengths, what your passions are, and you start to reach that certain money goal, you're then going to be in a position where you're going to have a fair amount of money that you can then focus on the next phase of business, which will be scaling, which will be selling, which will be just really focusing on your knowledge, because it'll be more valuable at that point. Once you've made, say, above $10,000 a month, monthly recurring revenue, you can focus on just selling your knowledge, and your next best characteristic is likely going to be sales. You can focus on people, hiring people, and starting to automate some of those tasks as well. And this is going to put you into a point of a position, which is kind of where I'm at relatively now, that you have enough money, you've learned a fair amount about yourself. You're still not Mr. Big Shot that you might have hoped you would be if you're making $10,000 to $50,000 a month. But you're in a position now that you can invest. You can do something a little bit bigger than just selling your time only. You can start to build an actual business potentially if you have the right plan on what you want to do for the next 5 to 10 years. You understand what your passion is, what your purpose is, what do you want your purpose to be, and you can get after it that way. So look, I appreciate you listening in. That is the end of this podcast. I don't have too much more to say about money. I probably actually do, but I'm going to leave it here so I don't drag this on too much more. I think to sum this up, in my perspective, it is okay that you drive for money, but do it with purpose, do it with the right mindset, have the right perspective as an outside view on yourself and on your journey, taking notes on how you're going to leverage your experiences to do something greater, something longer term. It's not just about that money. Once you reach that money, you realize that it's such a letdown. There's not this big change in your life. So I hope that this has been valuable. I hope that it has provided some insights and newfound perspectives to some of you. And if it has, please feel free to reach out to me. Let me know your experience. If you want to talk about it on the podcast, I'd love to have you on here to share that with other people as well who may be going through your same experience. And if you really got enough value away from this podcast, I would love it if you left me a review. It would mean the absolute world to me. I'm going to start setting some goals here soon of how many reviews I want to get within a certain amount of time. I might be doing some certain types of giveaways or something of the sorts. I've not at all planned that out yet, but I'm really excited about a lot of the things that I'm trying to slowly start planning out for this podcast. So again, thank you for listening in. Thank you for giving me your time. And I hope that it was worth it. I hope that you got value out of this podcast if you've listened this far. And otherwise, see you on the next podcast.